Chris, are you in a bad mood by any chance?
I'm not in a bad mood. I'm just exhausted.
Oh, tell us
That's
your
all.
woes.
Well, I'm just finding that there isn't enough of me to go around. I need a
Ah,
clone
I never thought you'd say
or
that.
three.
Not enough of
How
you to go around. How,
you just called me fat.
I
Was that a
never
fat
said
joke?
that. I didn't say that, no.
It's
And
not
I
a fat
didn't mean
joke.
it like that, of course. No one will ever truly know whether I meant that or not. But I'm going to save myself by saying, but Chris, there are so many aspects of you reaching beyond space and time. How could you say that there are not enough of you?
Rude. Bad
Well,
save.
how's that rude? Oh,
Bad
ancient
save.
one.
Bad save. Um, no, I mean for my mundane life. There's not enough of me to go around. There's not enough hours in the day, and I really don't want to have to start bending time at work. It's bad enough that I do it outside of work. Um, so yeah, but I think part of it is I don't know. I'm feeling the pressure of not feeling like we do enough.
Right, okay. I equally feel that pressure a lot of the time. Um, but then I often think about, well, comparing ourselves and what we get done in a day to what I know other people do,
Yeah,
specifically the sort of people that never submit their homework on time. You know, those sorts of people. There's a couple of them that have been a bit annoying of late that don't seem to understand.
mm.
Homework is a homework, and you go and do it, or you say, well, there is no excuse really. If you say, look, I'm really sorry, I'll have to reschedule our appointment.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fine. Need more time, that's fine. But what one doesn't do is turn up to the exam
yeah,
without
and say I didn't
your,
have time.
yes,
Dog
but
ate
my
my
dog get
homework.
the homework.
Yeah,
That's
my dog
unacceptable
ate
because
my
that's a
homework.
waste of my time and everyone else's time. So let's
Mm.
talk about bad seeds, bad moon rising, bad students, and then we can compare and contrast bad students with good students because I think that a lot of people think wrongly that bad student is someone that can't do anything. And we've had a lot of idiots over the years. We've had a lot of people that have come from nothing, and we've had a lot of people that progress slowly and take a very long, slow progression. And they're not what I'd call bad students.
No, no. The bad students are the ones that insist on seeing us regularly when they're not achieving anything. Those are the ones that bother me.
Sounds
Because
like you've
bearing
got
in
a
mind,
story to tell.
well, the thing is, this is what I'm going to have to do is clear up my language a little bit, mainly
Okay.
because I think what happens is we say things on here,
Mm.
and then they get translated, and the ones that work really hard think we mean them.
Well, I've noticed that of many of the people that we mentor online, because you don't have this from the in person ones, or I don't get this from the in person ones, partly because I don't think they listen to the podcast or anything. But it seems like as soon as you mention one thing, there's a big proportion of people that think that is instantly applicable to them. And you
Yeah,
kind of think, but you know that you're not the only people that we mentor, and there's quite a few
yeah.
people at this stage. Why on earth would you ever make that comparison? I don't know if that's narcissism or whether that's a worry and a need to please Chris.
Maybe, but I think it's also a work ethic thing. I think people that have a good work ethic in their real life, when it comes to their magic one,
Mm.
that they kind of apply that same level of pressure to themselves. And I think those that don't necessarily have a great work ethic during the day don't necessarily have a great one at the twilight hours. So I don't know. Maybe it's that, or maybe it's just a case of if we charge them £50 an hour, would they work harder and make sure their homework was done because they realised, well, they were paying £50 an hour?
I don't think so now. I think that the only way that you would be able to deal with it is like voice notes. Where it's like you have a minute to get your point across, you have a minute to ask a question, and then it's like, because I always think of those as kind of like bullet points, because Lee's the one for sending me those all the time, and it is useful because he has to get his point across really quickly and ask a question, you know. But it is one of those things that you kind of think, well, there's a big difference between the people that turn up and they've got a set questions that they want to ask, and there's people that just kind of turn up and wing it. And I don't have a problem with either of those approaches. What I do have a problem with, and the only thing that gets me, is repeating myself. And if it's repeating myself in the form of explaining something in a different way, that's fine. If it's an explaining myself by saying, I told you to go away and do this, come back when you've done it, and then they come back and they haven't done it.
Yeah.
That's what I have a problem with. There's 3 people specifically, and I'm not going to name names. There's 3 people specifically that I'm thinking of when it comes to this.
I so want to guess them just for fun, but I know I shouldn't.
No, you shouldn't do. But at the same time, the people that are really hard on themselves will be sat there thinking, I wonder if Liam's talking about me. I bet he's talking about me. I don't think he is, but he might be. The chances are the people that I'm actually talking about in no way, shape or form will ever think, oh, he's talking about me there.
No, they wouldn't. And that's the thing, because I think that it's, again, that's why I say it's a work ethic thing. I genuinely think they work hard. And I think they reckon they work harder than everybody else. And I think it comes down to the fact that we hint on here about the people that we see regularly and all that kind of stuff. But actually, because they don't know, they think that what happens in their chat session, whatever you want to call it, happens in all of them. And you're kind of like, well, no. Some of them we come and we see, and they'll be like, I got everything done in an hour. And they're apologizing.
Most of them take an hour to an hour and a half. And on a quick one, it's 15 minutes to half an hour.
Yeah. And in that, and then you get some of them that do the half an hour and they're like, I'm really sorry for wasting your time. And you're kind of like, no, you've done more in the last, you've told us more and done more in that half an hour than you've done, than some of them have done in 6 months. And you're just kind of like, you know, you're just weighing it up differently because you only see your homework. Whereas because we see all of them, we compare them to each other, even by accident.
You can't help but compare people to each other, and you're not supposed to. No. But I mean, they call it the remedial group for you know for a reason, and that's what they do, isn't it? It's like, I would imagine because I can say this because I was in the patchwork quilt room, right?
No,
and I was
you can't keep talking about the patchwork.
I was in the patchwork quilt room. I was one of the special kids. They used to say I was special, and I used to think, because I wasn't like Jenny, she was the one who used to eat the copy decks, which was hilarious. Because anyway, I won't go into that.
Just stop. The reason you can't keep saying this is because I work in a professional place that you cannot use the word special. Okay.
Yes.
I'm not even comfortable with the word remedial either.
But I am special, and I don't mean special in the Instagram follow me because I'm God's gift kind of special. I mean special as in everyone told me I would never amount to anything and that I'm useless. From nursery school onwards, they all said that. There's a good job I didn't listen to them, wasn't it?
Nice.
Most of them are dead now. But yeah,
Wow.
I think there's a difference between making progression, because I know of many people that have got big work that isn't going to be done from one week to the next. It could potentially take years to get
Yeah.
cracked, you know. It's
Yeah.
not about accomplishing and not doing everything first time and not making mistakes and stuff like that. What it is, the ethic of actually, I think it's what makes a good student, realistically, because what makes a good student isn't necessarily what makes the student with the highest grades, because there are students with high grades that can just want in and memorize a load of shit, whereas there are students that really apply themselves. The students that really apply themselves are the good students, you know, that you cannot fault.
You can see that effort. One of
Mm,
my biggest bugbears is the people that have fucked up a spell, right, or have messed up in some way, shape, or form, and they know full well the first question out of our mouths is going to be, "So why do you think that was?" Like,
mm,
and they're like, "I don't know," and you're just kind of like, you telling me that you knew it was set for homework, that you were going to have a conversation with us, and you haven't even thought of a possibility of why
mm.
it might have gone wrong? Are you not assessing your spell work when you're in a mentorship program? Like, do you know what I mean?
But
I think it's stuff like that.
the danger of the type of student that you're talking about is the spoon feeding, is what they want, because we teach critical thinking. We teach, there's so
Yeah,
much content out there, and I've had so many consultations with people where the content just goes straight over their heads, and they say, well, I don't understand, and I'm like, I could think of a couple of videos and podcasts and that where all of this is covered, but even if they listen or have listened, it just goes over their heads because they don't click. That's fine, but what you need to be aware of is that we teach critical thinking. We teach you, we are mentoring you. That is, mentoring is a completely different than a course that teaches you to you know, to pass a test. It is, you're in the driving seat when you're being mentored. That is not like school. That is, you're already on a path and doing a job. Mentoring is, oh, I need to ask someone else that's got a bit more experience with this for pointers. That's mentoring. Now, with mentoring that we take, obviously, we're taking people that want to progress and push further. Yeah, because otherwise there isn't a huge amount of us mentoring them. You know, if they don't want to push themselves further, realistically, what is the point of, you know, asking us to mentor you? Because you know what we're like. We always want better. But
yeah.
if
At the
it's
end,
the case of, yeah,
I was going to say, at the end of the day, our sessions are there for that. Therefore, you know, I've been punching this weight for the last 6 months. I'm not seeing any progress. Why am I not seeing any progress? And you just kind of like, well, the reason you're not seeing any progress is because you need to change up your routine, or you need to do such and such in order to do it. Or it's a case of you've got people that have been practicing a long time, and these are the ones I love for having too, because I think these ones get a little bit scared to speak to us because they feel like they should be so
mm,
far based on years of service, which isn't always the case.
mm,
Um, and the kind of like, I think that takes real guts to turn around to somebody else, particularly someone that often you look up to turn around and say, I've been practicing this long and I feel like I've hit a ceiling. Like, I think that takes real balls to actually say, you
it
know,
does.
I'm struggling here and I don't know where to go. Like, I'm looking at you know, I'm seeing everything that's out there, and actually none of it's making sense. Can you help? And you know, because that, I think, is the big part of the Patreon that I think a lot of people struggle with, is the fact that it is that easy.
Mm.
You know, it is very much a non, you know, I know on here we're very judgmental about other people's practice,
That's what it's
but
for. The No Holds Barred
that's what
Witchcraft
it's
podcast
for.
is about being judgmental. Then we don't
But
have to be judgmental in mentoring sessions.
Yeah. And then in the mentor session, an opportunity to see why we are so judgmental. It gives you an opportunity to kind of go, well, actually, you should be doing this, or have you considered this? Like, at the end of the day, I think, and I kicked one out. I probably should say that. I scared one off the other month, didn't I? Have we talked about that on here?
What, you mean a mentee?
As in, well, they never got as far as being a mentee.
Oh,
The
oh,
one that joined
okay.
the one that joined the Patreon and within 2 days had left
Oh, yeah.
because they
I
thought we
read
were
the
going.
messages.
They thought we were going to. They were going to for $3 a month or whatever it was. Was suddenly going to have this entire encyclopedia of spells that she could just copy, and not actually have to do any work for. And then
Yeah.
obviously, after reminding her for the third or fourth time, I think it was, that if you wanted a consultation service where you're going to buy our work, then that's going to cost you a bit more than what the Patreon is. And here's a link to our buy a spell or whatever whatever it calls, hire a witch page on the website. I'm like, here, you're here to learn how to do it and how to do it yourself critically, not just follow a recipe, love. Like, and then I think by the third time she realized she tried to shortcut, I think, past the £60 an hour or whatever it is we charge on the website by going, oh well, £3 in a month, I can go and get all the things I wanted to get. But yeah, it didn't wash.
Which is interesting because the amount of times we talk crap about people copying and pasting spells, you'd have thought that you'd twig about.
Why would you think that we would be okay with that?
People come from all sorts of places, though, to be fair, don't they? Yeah, the bad ones don't stay long. But yeah, I mean, if someone comes to me, and let's say that this may be hypothetical or may not be hypothetical, because I don't want this likeness to be anything like anyone that might be listening that thinks it's them. Because, of course, it might not be, because all of this is anonymous. If someone comes to me and says, Liam, Chris, I've been working on crossing the abyss. It's like, okay. And they say, how'd you do it? And what we're inclined to say is, well, how do you think you do it?
Yeah.
And how have you tried to do it before? Or I've never tried, but I've heard a lot about it,
Yeah.
I want you, because you know about all this secret cult stuff. So tell me. I was like, well, you see, in order to understand where you're at, we need to understand what your thought process is. In order to understand your thought process, generally speaking, we could potentially download some information. I do every now and then, normally just to fuck with people, but more than likely it's not good for teaching, because what you need to do as a mentee is open up, be vulnerable, and say, look, I've tried this has failed. I've tried that, I'm thinking about doing this. You might laugh, because we get that. You might laugh, but this is how I think. It's like, well, I'm not going to laugh necessarily, because it's you showing that is the way you're thinking. And by seeing what you're thinking and what your thought process is, that enables us to use that as a board to spell out where the problems are, And I could say to certain people, if that's the case, it may be a 5-minute talk about, well, this is above your ability at the moment, given that you don't even know what the fucking abyss is, that you've just heard about in books because you're an armchair magician. Or it could be something as simple as saying, well, one of the most popular ways of doing it from a human perspective is that if you ever manage to do it, it means that you're there in the future. And if you're there in the future, then you've been there, therefore you are there, because it's outside of space and time. So you're already there. And if you're already there, then just go there. Because you're already there. That'll fuck people up thinking about that, because they won't be able to understand it. But that's because they haven't got to that level yet. But that's a simple approach, not the only approach, of course, but it's, if people, that little golden nugget, if people have the knowledge to be able to understand and work the magic necessary to make that little golden nugget, that little puzzle piece like you get from the charity shop, those puzzles where there's always a piece missing. You've got all of it. You can see what the image is. There's just one fucking piece missing. That gold nugget might be one of those pieces that are missing for some people, and it might be as simple as just saying that. For others, it might be a decades-long, approach of getting people to learn from the ground up magic from scratch because they've never even done anything before. So it depends. I mean, there isn't really any cookie cutter approaches that we take, and we have to marry up people's specific goals, which constantly change because every time you learn more, which is another thing that tends to screw people up. They think, well, now I've got this information, I don't think I know anything. I was like, well, no, you don't know anything. That's how it works. That's how you know you're doing progress, because as soon as you've got your map and your structure and your schematic, how you think it all worked, and then something happens and you're like, oh crap, I don't think I actually really know this. I knew a little bit and I've got this basic structure, but that's what improvement is. And that's why traditions fail, because they don't necessarily innovate and don't push further. What they have to do is track people in certain, particularly when it comes to the mystery schools or the occult lodges, is initiatory degrees. You're capable of understanding atoms, but we won't go any further than that until you get to A level.
Yeah.
Which the schooling system does to a certain extent. They have initiatory degrees in the form of qualifications and years and stuff. But magic is also like that. But for the solitary practitioner that is not in a specific grade or has a specific title or anything like that, those degrees of initiation are, I think I knew it. It worked ever so well until this thing came along, screwed it all up. Now I don't think I know the system or how any of it works anymore. Now you know that you've made some progress.
I think for some people it comes down to the fact that they think they know something because it's the highest they've managed to get to. And until you offer them a different perspective, they then suddenly go, okay, maybe I haven't learned everything, because they've never actually had to explain it. I think what's nice for us is kind of because they're finally having to explain a spell. But I think the scariest phrase that most people kind of screws most people up, believe it or not, is people when we say, so how does that work? And they go, I don't know, it just works. And then they have to force themselves to think and give us an answer.
Oh, they'll give a bullshit answer, like sympathetic magic, which is a copy and paste answer. You can't get much more copy and paste answer than that. What I really like is when they try and regurgitate something we've said. I love that. I love it when they do that. Not really understanding. That's brilliant. Oh, spell triangles. The spell triangle. It's like, right, okay, what's the spell triangle? Is that even a thing? Love that. So what about good students then? Comparing to the good students. I don't think we're allowed to name names because we're not allowed to have favourites.
No, we're not allowed to have favourites. But this will be interesting because maybe it'll make people realise which people we might be talking about. Should be easier for them to know. The going back to the voice notes, I think that's one of my favourite things that some of mine do. Is because I quite like the catch up that I feel like I'm having. So like for the voice notes, it's often, well, I've done this, and this is what I'm thinking. Get back to me when you have time. That for me feels like someone is making progress between chats.
Yeah.
Without realizing they're making progress between chats, because they won't feel like they've hit progress until we discuss it. But having that kind of continual log that kind of goes, I did this week and I did that this week, so that they don't feel that, because I find those people that are progressing at that speed are often the ones that go, well, I don't want to waste your time talking about this because I actually want to have my session. And they feel like the catch-up part is a waste of their session.
Yeah.
So I think the mentees that I enjoy the most are the ones that we only hit problems that they actually want to hit during a session.
Yeah.
Obviously,
So
if there's someone you're seeing every week, then at that point you've kind of got those 5 minutes to catch up. But you know, if you know you're not, the potential is you're not going to see them for 3 weeks. Then those kind of catch ups in between mean I know you're making progress and what kind of progress you're making, but they don't necessarily.
for the beginners, you can just do a quick update because you set them a task or a couple of tasks to do, and they go away and they try to do it, and then you go back and you either congratulate them, oh well done, you've done this, here's the next thing, or you work through because they've encountered some sort of problem. The more intermediates and advanced ones, they will progress at a massively rapid rate. So what you have to do is, you to a certain extent have to keep an eye on them, but also you need to have constant updates, because they'll be going hurtling along at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it's not like they'll be the only ones, because they'll be working and getting input from all sorts of other things, and we'll say things, not people. So that you really do have to keep an eye on, and every now and then you might have to just put a thing saying, are you sure that's a good idea? Or tweak it a little bit, because they're on their journey, and then that way a real fulfilling session with them isn't so much the catch up, it's the what stage are you at now, because they're back to you because they found a real problem that they can actually the one thing I do, because I used to always get creeped out of voice notes, and some people don't like to do the voice notes thing, so they'll leave like updates with paragraphs and stuff like that, which is also nice to read through. I like those ones as well. But the one thing about the voice notes that you don't get with the paragraphs necessarily is that you can actually hear their brain hurting as they're trying to explain.
You can match the you know that you're hitting the right tone, because there's nothing worse than the written word in some ways, because unless you know how someone likes to punctuate and how they register, like I have a tendency, I've got myself in trouble so many times because I find because I have such a sarcastic way of saying things, I have to kind of symbolize that I'm either being sarcastic, joking, or if I'm being really serious. So I over emoji, as you well know, use far too many emojis in my talking, and in the written word, and that's because I want to be sure that people are aware that I'm joking, because otherwise they think I'm either telling them off or just being a prick. And I had to resist saying the C word then, because that's really what I'm being. But so I over announce, and I'm the same when it comes to kind of this sounds awful, but when someone is messaging, I kind of like to mark it. So those kind of like hearts, ticks, sad faces, etc. that you can now get in Messenger. I kind of mark it so that they know where I'm at, or that actually I really like that idea. Need to question that one. That one we might need to talk on about later. I kind of do that with emojis now because Messenger allows you to. So they know they're totally on the right track if everything's being hearted. But that sort of thing. So I kind of use those as kind of check-in points without actually having to necessarily explain myself, because they know if I'm hearting everything that they're on the right track. What I don't like, I suppose don't like is a bit of a stretch, but I don't like having to constantly explain myself. Like, it's different.
Explain yourself now. What do you mean by that? Bearing in mind you've got less than a minute, and then we're transferring over to Patreon. In fact, hold your tongue. What we'll say is we'll say goodbye to everyone, and you'll have to go on the Patreon to listen to the full edition of this.
It's so dirt cheap. Come on,
it's worth it, definitely.